President of the Technology Association of Georgia, Tino Mantella, to present the 2007 State of the Industry Report, Innovation 2.0 in Georgia.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. Being that I am head of the Technology Association of Georgia, I'm the one that is the most likely source to reduce my program presentation so that we can get closer to being back on track. So, plan to do that. As I talk about the State of the Industry Report and think about Rich's comments, one thing I can say in all certainty is Georgia is faring better than Easter Island did. So we're happy to know that. I can say that for sure. What I'm going to do is spend about 15 minutes giving you a snippet of a report that's actually over 100 pages long. You all at your desk, at your table, in your brochure, in your program, you should have the CD, which provides you with the entire State of the Industry Report document, compliments of TAG, and now you too can be very much have expertise in relation to information about Georgia and its technology. I thought today in my limited time what I would do is address my comments primarily around innovation and entrepreneurship, given that that's a theme. The report itself is much more extensive. It covers a number of different areas, but what we tried to do was identify those areas that were most relevant to innovation and entrepreneurship. And now that I am up here, I just realized that I don't have the piece to a clicker to move the slide. So does someone have that, Dennis, or? Appreciate it. No. Sorry about that. A little bit of a commercial on TAG here, and for the last 2 years we've really been building the foundation of the organization. We've established a prominent board, many of them who are here with us this evening. We've built a strong staff. We've built 20 or supported 20 of our societies that all have great leaders, and we have a group called the Leadership Council that meets on a regular basis. And that's in turn helped us to drive membership. Membership's actually double the amount of members it was 2 years ago, so we're approaching 3,000 members and continuing to climb. So TAG has emerged as a stable contributor to the technology movement in Georgia. I think, certainly our board, and we know you expect more of us, and that's what we plan to deliver in the future. In fact, our goal in 2011 is the TAG will play a role in Georgia's becoming one of the top 3 fastest growing technology states. We know that we can't do that alone, but our support of members, and it's particularly in the areas of education, unification of the technology community, and information is going to, we believe, help drive economic development in Georgia. And we will do our part and partners with many other organizations within the state. Just briefly on those 3 points, in education, TAG has moved from simply providing over 100 what we call our infotainment meetings, which many of you have been part of with great speakers and panels, into more in-depth training and education. We want to be an enabler for companies in Georgia to support what you need in terms of your education, and we feel that that's another great way for TAG to add value and support our companies. In terms of unification, we're doing a number of things, but one quick example is we have a number of partners that we call our affiliated partners. I know ATP's here, and Wireless Technology Forum's here, MIT Enterprise Forum's here, and these are groups that we work together with to try to bring TAG into a relationship with the rest of the technology community. And in the area of Inform, we're doing a number of things. We've started TAG TV and TAG Radio with our friends at Global Speak. We're doing a directory soon with our friends at Knowledge Storm. We've redeveloped our website with our partners at NeboWeb. We're starting blogging with a group, one of the top 40 actually at the Port. white papers with medium blue. So we're doing a number of things to support the technology movement through providing information. We looked at information that was out there. We looked at what other communities were doing. We realized that there was a void in being a repository for information for people in technology that can make decisions. And that's really important for a number of reasons, just basically to provide facts, statistics, and trends, to be a resource for large and small technology companies, to be a guide for companies considering headquarters and relocation in Georgia, to be a means of differentiating Georgia's tech sector from other states, and a rich source of information for the news media. This wouldn't have been possible without our partners, and our major partners in this endeavor are the Metropolitan Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, GRA, the Georgia Research Alliance, and the Georgia Department of Economic Development. Georgia Power was a gold sponsor, and we had a number of silver sponsors, Tech CFO, WIT, Spherion, and DeVry University. And Angelou Economics was the group that we contracted with to provide much of the raw data that then our staff person, Melanie Brandt, helped to create the document. If you look at the first slide, you see that Georgia is doing quite well compared to in medium household income compared to the rest of the nation. In fact, there was good news according to Atlanta Business Chronicle. Atlanta will be the home for a greater number of millionaires than any other major metropolitan area in the USA. So there's no argument, I think, from anyone that that's not a good piece of news. Yet some of us that are closer to the technology community, and Rich referred to it earlier in his presentation, I think sometimes you want to say, show me the money, or where is the money? Because there seems to be more reluctance after the tech bust, and most of you know this, to invest in early stage or our companies. In fact, a lot of people anecdotally have said to me that there's much more investment in real estate in this area, which basically we all know, than there is in venture. And we found out from the Chamber of Commerce, gave us some information that over $4 billion was invested in the last quarter of 2006 in real estate. And if you compare that to venture money for all of 2006, $353 million, there's quite a divide there. So, you know, one of the goals is to get people to believe again in the businesses that are in Georgia and make the investment here in technology. Maybe I should use the right thing. This shows Atlanta, and you can see that there's even a broader gap in terms of wealth in the metropolitan Atlanta area. We do have a distinct advantage in terms of an age demographic. The Atlanta Metropolitan Chamber of Commerce recently announced that Metropolitan Atlanta leads the nation in its gain in overall market share of college-educated 25 to 34-year-olds. They call that group the young and the restless, which is the most coveted demographic by business. The 1990 to 2000 Metro Atlanta increased this population by 46%, faster than any of the top 20 most populous metropolitan areas in the United States. Our research looked at a broader demographic market segment from 25 to 44 throughout the state and revealed that our 30.6 in that segment is higher than any of the notable technology states, California, Massachusetts, North Carolina, for example. So why is this significant? The age group generates the king-size share of wealth creation and business formation. Tech companies conducting initial site searches for new locations, according to Angelou's research, place a high value on the abundance of a ready workforce. And we all know that the United States is aging in general, and Georgia is no exception. So as a young professional age group shrinks, sustaining a leadership position in this area will take on even greater significance. In a related point, Atlanta ranks 7th in educational attainment with bachelor's degree or higher, in the metropolitan area. And here we see the Atlanta demographic, which also is, again, quite similar and very positive. Our labor force has been on a consistent move. First of all, the population in Georgia is projected to be 10 million people, in the next 4 years, growing at a compounded average rate of 2.2% over the past 10 years. This chart shows that our labor force growth is consistently outpacing the nation. Recent Atlanta Business Chronicle article citing Monster.com reported that Georgia beat the nation again in 2006, and although it cited a decline in the close of the Ford plant and some home construction areas, there was a major spike in hospitality. Some of that was related to the situation in New Orleans, and also with the opening of the aquarium. Hugo Sellert from Monster in the same article cited a report from Robert Hall International that said the category that is pushing the hardest is workers for IT. They did a survey of Atlanta CIOs and said expect significant hiring in Q1. And TAG started a job board, and we can see the spike as well in terms of just the interest and the robust market in terms of technology. Hopefully this will make an impact on our next slide. So you can see the, we'll call it a slow recovery, but during the period after the bust, the tech sector employment was impacted hard, and it was slightly worse than the nation. And so when you ask why, and most of this is anecdotal, we believe to some degree there was more buildup prior to the bubble, so to some degree then the bigger the climb, the harder the fall. The other point is that that period, and we're getting to transition to a broader market of technology, but with the emphasis on software and software being hit harder, therefore there was more of a significant decline in our market. This is actually one of my favorite slides because I think people are sometimes surprised as Georgia is a land of entrepreneurs and enterprise, and we've been saying that. You know, some people have said entrepreneurism is in Georgia's DNA, and if you look at this slide, even during that same period we showed a decline in employment. We also showed the really major spike in enterprise growth, far outpacing the nation. So, you know, some speculation as to why that is we can pretty safely speculate that the tech pros that were laid off when the bubble burst did not want to move out of the Georgia area, and they started their own companies, and the trend has happened elsewhere. For example, National Instruments, one of Austin's largest companies, were created by an engineer that was laid off during the downturn. I have a chart in my office, and many of you have seen this. It's actually presented at one of the early summits that shows Scientific Atlanta, I know they're with us today, as one of the early pioneers in Georgia, 1952. And from that company, there were a number of spin-offs with talented executives that went and started new companies, and that repeats itself often in Georgia. Is another reason why enterprises, even during the darkest days of the tech bust, were moving forward positively. And it does go beyond the areas that I mentioned. Also the universities, Georgia Research Alliance, ATDC Venture Lab, TAG, and others contribute. Author Richard Florida, who wrote The Rise of the Creative Class and Where the Brains Are, states that we now have 12 more college graduates per 100 people than the national average, putting us fourth. And if those of you that are interested, San Diego's first with 16 more per 100. The next slide shows that there was a decline, as we talked about, in software, but also there was a more positive impact in some of the areas recently, like wireless and R&D, and so it's sort of a mixed bag during that period. One of the things going for Georgia, and these next three slides show that, is that the economy is quite balanced. If you look at this particular slide, it shows the largest segment for Georgia is trade and utilities at 26%. It's followed by professional and business services at 19%, education, and so on. If you look at specific areas like Augusta, and Savannah, you also see that there's a good balance, which I think is a positive. This next slide is probably difficult for some of you to see, but it's a cluster map. If you look in the lower left corner, that would be weak locally and shrinking nationally. In the lower right, it's weak locally and growing nationally. In the top left, it's growing locally and shrinking nationally. And finally, on the top right, which is the place you'd like to have your state be involved, strong locally and growing nationally. A couple interesting points. On the lower left, there's an area, if I can hit it right there, I think it's this one, it's energy, that you would think would be, with the greening of America, if you will, and the world being more concentrated on that there would be a movement here to move this into the circle size, by the way, is the relevance in relation to other industries in Georgia. So even though we're looking to be more in that area, the fact is that it's weak locally and shrinking nationally, although we think that there will be some change in that as over the course of the next few years. We certainly know a lot of the companies that are in Venture Lab and involved with Georgia Tech are looking at that area. Another somewhat of a surprise, some of you, this dot right here is biotechnology, and it's a small circle for us, weak locally but growing nationally, which is not a surprise. But you'll see in some of my later charts that there's actually some very strong progress in that area, and so it's a positive. Logistics, which is right here, which is on the side of strong locally and shrinking nationally, is something that we're very committed, obviously, here to supply chain and logistics, and we do have a major position in that area. And finally, a couple of the areas on the right side in terms of communication software are important, and we're looking to be in a lead position in those areas, as it shows that we are today. Shifting gears a little bit, there was some discussion already about venture capital money. These are always quite interesting and quite easy to understand. Georgia, in the fourth quarter of 2006, ranked 9th in venture capital dollars generated, $113 million. That represented 17 deals. For those that are interested, 10 of those deals were in software, and 2 of those deals were in biotech. This next chart shows that we had some improvement, and by the way, in 2006, the total number was $350 million in Georgia. But if you want to know the total number for the nation, it's $25.5 billion. So that represents about a little over 1% for us, and so we clearly have a way to go. And the question remains, how do we drive more funding to Georgia? Do we have the ideas and talent? Do we have the process? Talking with our ideas committee, John Bacon and Rich DeMillo and others that are part of one of the TAG groups, they talk about the need for a stronger process here and compare and contrast to Silicon Valley, where there's a lot more general support, as they say, from the beginning through the process of helping a young entrepreneur. Do other parts of Georgia recognize Georgia or even the Southeast as a place to invest? And from speaking to a number of venture capital leaders here and elsewhere, the answer is no, not at this time. So the Metropolitan Atlanta Chamber of Commerce, the Gwinnett Chamber of Commerce, and others are very active in trying to focus on marketing and driving marketing as a point in relation to letting people know about what's here, because there's a lot more here than what people realize, and Georgia is a good place to invest. There are new funds being created. Norah Mosley Partners and others are raising funds today, so I think that's a positive that things are beginning to pick up again. This next chart shows graphically the venture capital dollars, and I think speaks to the point that Rich made earlier. So 2000, probably to no one's surprise, the heady period, there was investment in just about everything, right? So if you look now, and you could plug in there $353 million for 2006, we are quite flat. And so people that are and many of the people here today and many of our companies, these young investors, and we have to ask the question again, where does the money come? Where's the deal flow taking place? This next slide complements the Georgia Biomedical Partnership that also conducted a State of the Industry report this year. I think that's a real positive that both Technology Association of Georgia with its partners and the Georgia Biomedical Partnership both develop reports that will be much more helpful, I think, or more helpful to the community moving forward. You'll see that I think the good news is here, oops, I pushed the wrong button, sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. I have too many gadgets up here. We did hit the period of the heyday this year. There were 13 deals in 2005 actually, with $120 million matching 1999 highs. So people have said, don't compare and contrast to North Carolina. Well, we did, and we looked at that, and we contacted them a few days ago. And just for reference, they're ranking third in the nation, and they took in about $288 million in venture capital during the 2005 period, so more than twice our amount. But then we asked them about software and how much they took in, and it was $24 million. So they're clearly focused on the area of bioscience and biotech. But in 2006, it's interesting, North Carolina reports that they're taking in $172 million. And in talking to our friends at Georgia Biotech Partnership, they were talking about $100 million in 2006. So some might say that we are closing the gap. There's been some other interesting happenings in the last year or so. Emory University, the $487 million AIDS drug deal, and we also understand that CardioMIMS is looking to raise $95 million in IPO. So I think there's a lot of positives within that aspect of next slide. Again, shifting gears a bit here, you'll see that the challenges for VCs in the state can be illustrated. The chart in this chart, the chart compares Georgia's science and technology and economy with the U.S. national average, and Georgia has a higher percentage of high technology shares of all business establishment. But surprisingly, I think the state is below average, significantly below average in terms of small business innovation research program award dollars, venture capital disbursement, and venture capital deals compared to the rest of the nation. You won't be able to see this chart, but just to point out that this chart depicts that just about every major university in Georgia has entrepreneur programs. I think that's a positive for the state. This next chart shows research dollars, and the yellow line represents Georgia Tech, and you see that for all the universities, there's a major investment in research here in Georgia, which is again a positive. There was a mention of patents. All the universities are still participating in patent development, and you can see in 2005 the numbers are still significant. And if you're just curious about where we stand in relation to other patent holders, you see by this chart that Kimberly-Clark, followed by Bell South, AT&T, NCR, and Georgia Tech. TAG's also playing its part in early stage development, which is the key area that we need to focus on, I believe, in terms of helping young companies get started. Last year we did our first business launch competition. You're going to hear from our winner very soon. And we had 56 companies that applied to receive the winner received $100,000 in cash and $150,000 in services. And this was in partnership with our friends at the Georgia Research Alliance. We're also doing a number of programs with ATDC. We've started a TAG ATDC Entrepreneur Program. We're participating in their Brown Bag program and a program called Fast Track, all geared towards focusing on entrepreneurs. This chart shows the IPO climate. So probably many of you know that IPOs are I would say, generally speaking, although there are some changes in the marketplace now, have been more difficult to come by. You see, year 2000, there were 11, and we haven't come near that point again. Author Bill Reichart, in his writing in The Small is Beautiful, he says, despite the bean counters say today, the number of startups are up, valuations are up, revenues are up, recruiting is up. The IPO market is pretty sloggy, but who needs IPOs when you can sell your 2-year-old startup to eBay for $2.6 billion? So, which brings me to my next slide here, which is the high-tech merger and acquisition market, which is, you see by this chart, has been very significant, and this last year, $4.1 billion, far exceeds any other year. So even though the IPO market has been sloggy, as Reichert says, the acquisition market has been hot, and people have found other ways to the exit. There's always a question, is this good for Georgia? We know about the major companies that have bought and sold, and I think there are some positives. I probably don't have time to talk about them, but there are positives in relation to companies that are being invested in here are also being positioned as lead organizations for their particular discipline or industry. You can think of our friends at Harbor Payment and American Express and Scientific Atlanta and Cisco as two examples of that. We need to go back a slide, please. Okay, this next slide shows that Georgia is 6th in merger and acquisitions with the $4.1 billion. And so while we're 6th in the U.S., it only represents 4.2% of the market share. So before we pat ourselves on the back too much, it's still a small percentage. Finally, in summary, I would say that we have the ingredients to have Georgia positioned as one of the top 3 leading technology states in the United States. The Milk and Tech Index report did a study on the capacity of Georgia, and they said the capacity of Georgia to absorb new technology companies is about half that of California, which is actually, talking to most people, is actually quite a good thing. We have the young and the restless population, the college-educated population, the research institutions, the industries transitioning to a tech balance. We're not wed to any one particular industry. We have the culture of new enterprise, which is the key indicator, according to the Milken study. The key indicator to a vibrant economy is the rate of startup. So we're positioned well there. We still have 25 Fortune 500 companies and strong established technology companies throughout the state. So that's the ingredients. How do you shake and bake that to make things successful? 4 or 5 points. I still think there's a great fragmentation of the market. Rich talked a little bit about the culture and how do we create a community, a culture and support to support our technology companies. I think that'll be very important. Again, the lack of process. Georgia's a well-kept secret. How do we drive that market? How do we create deal flow, and how do we create support and the passion throughout the state? And at the state level as well, there's a couple of bills right now. There's Senate Bill 80, and there's House Bill 435, which is Angel Investor Tax Credit Program. There's been some empathy, I would say, from the state in terms of getting behind things like that. But the tax credit program for those angel investing, I know Knox Massey's out here somewhere. See him, they're really trying to drive that through, and I think it has a pretty good chance to happen. So my final thought moves away from statistics, and in the world of blogging, I just sort of picked this up from a guy who probably never thought he would be quoted in the Technology Association of Georgia. His name, I'll give him credit, his name is Mark Kuznicki. He says, I dream of a future where every individual has the power and the ability to discover his or her creative passions. The Holy Grail is the unification of one's practical needs with their hopes, dreams, and aspirations. It's a universal desire and the most powerful force in human civilization. Finally, again, more kudos to Melanie Brandt, who helped us with the report. If you need more information on the report, please feel free to contact her or contact me. And again, make sure you take these home, share them with your friends, and we'll also have the information on our site as well. So, and if you are back to the days of wanting this in hard copy, you can also talk to Melody and you can purchase one in hard copy. Thank you very much.